So, just a little bit about me. For over 25 years, I have worked in communications, program development, and nonprofit leadership, focusing on children's issues in the areas of addiction and trauma, learning disabilities, executive dysfunction, autism, and childhood cancer. I'm a very proud mother of two sons who are 26 and 27 years old. I'm also the daughter of a father who admitted when I was 13 years old that he was an alcoholic and had stopped drinking. I can still remember how that truth made my skin crawl, and I defended him immediately, telling him he didn't need to believe those nasty lies that people were telling him. This was my big, larger than life dad. He was a Marine, he was a rock, and I loved my father very much. I just couldn't make sense of any truth that didn't support that he was perfect, at least as perfect as I believed him to be. I've spent the last 40 years using the three A's to continue to make sense of what that truth means to me, to my life, and to my family. And it is an ongoing process. So, with that, let's learn about and make sense of the three A's. I want to start this evening with a moment of silence to allow everything from the day to wash away and allow ourselves to be more present as we spend this time together. So close your eyes if you like and allow yourself to take a nice deep breath in. Hold it for a few moments and now release it slowly. Thank you all for taking this time to join me to learn about the three A's and how we can find a more peaceful, serene way to live our lives. In our families, because of trauma and lack of healthy skills, parents tend to just do the best they can. We must remember that because addiction lives in our families, our parents were often raised with the impact of addiction as well, either parents with the disease of addiction themselves or by parents who were adult children who grew up in homes and never healed from their own trauma. In either case, they are limited in their effectiveness to communicate and show their love to their kids. And those kids grow up and live the same way, still lacking a more healthy approach to identifying feelings and communicating effectively. When you live this way, what you tend to see more often than not is the need to immediately react. When you don't want to admit how you feel and you don't want to acknowledge problems as they arise, faster you can react to a situation, the better, hoping to simply make the awkwardness or pain disappear. And sometimes it doesn't even matter how it disappears. It doesn't matter if it's right. It doesn't matter if it's healthy. If it is immediate, it is effective. Sometimes it's by totally ignoring it altogether. Sometimes it's by distracting it with other things like rage, project. And sometimes you may even hear people can tell how upset they are by how feverishly they clean their house. Some insult others and they attack rather than to respond to what is happening in their own head or in their own lives. In our families, you also see the need to control something or someone. It can be a very, very effective method. It isn't what is happening with me, but only if you would do what I want you to do, then everything else will be okay. Regardless of whatever the reaction is, it is the immediate process of moving on, like the flick of a light switch. That is what's important. All because something is uncomfortable, something is awkward, something is not okay with what is happening at the moment. So we don't think about it and we just instantly do something to make it disappear in whatever way we can. When we as ACOAs make the decision to become healthier, it takes time for us to unlearn this practice. We start by understanding the three unspoken rules that live in families impacted by addiction and how they work. They are: don't talk, don't trust, and don't feel. It is in breaking these rules where we learn a much healthier way to do things. When issues arise, whether it is something that we're thinking, something that someone else is doing, or a situation that presents itself to us, we can react immediately. And this is very effective because if we aren't thinking, we aren't feeling. And often we don't even consider talking to other people about it. And by not talking to other people about things, we are continually reminding ourselves that we are alone. We remind ourselves we can't trust others with what we think and what is happening in our lives. In the moment, we may not have healthy skills, but we do have effective survivor skills. We have learned how to ignore, to distract, or somehow remove uncomfortable situations. And we're really very good at it. And this is where the three A's are a game changer. The three A's provide a roadmap of how to do all of this differently. So when we have a feeling that makes us feel awkward or uncomfortable, what do we do with that feeling? If we are engaging with someone else and something uncomfortable happens, how do we want to respond next time in a healthier way rather than ignoring it, going numb, or just reacting with almost an autopilot response? If we are in a room, let's say, where something uncomfortable happens, like a person who is drunk and falls down the stairs, do we laugh? Do we make it a joke and say, oh, it's no big deal. He's always clumsy. And the person is the ridiculed and teased for a couple weeks? Or do we look at that and admit to ourselves that addiction is getting really serious and he might die? If there is a disagreement at work, do we have a knee jerk reaction to engage in a huge battle to prove that we are right? Do we run and quit our job? Or do we have a more detailed conversation to learn more about what is happening? It is important to remember that our problems for us families that are affected by the disease of addiction is how we think and engage with others. These aren't only problems related to alcohol or other substances. Our issues affect our thinking, our families, our friendships, and our jobs. It affects how we live our lives, not just how we interact with people who are struggling with addiction. And that's where the three A's provide a great deal of assistance. Here are the three A's. It is awareness, acceptance, and action. And we're going to talk about each component and how they work, and then how we'll throw in a couple of examples. So the first is awareness, the knowledge or perception of a situation or fact. We only know what we know. I read once that although we may hate the idea of denial, it is our friend. It is our protector. It hides things we aren't ready to deal with. So, allowing ourselves the ability to become aware of things is an invaluable way to live our lives as it is, not as we want it to be. We must become aware of our own thoughts, people around us, and the situations in our lives. This isn't saying that we are only in denial of bad things. Sometimes it's the good things too. Do we hate ourselves so much that we don't allow ourselves to recognize that we are good at something? Are we so scared to engage with others that we don't allow ourselves to consider a friendship with a healthy person or a safe adult? Do we walk around with blinders on and don't even realize that a promotion that might be perfect for us has been posted and is now available to apply? Our awareness becomes like a special set of glasses that we can put on, and it allows us to detail the world that we are, quote, ready to see, comfortable to see, have the courage to see. The first stage in this is to pause long enough to be present, put on these glasses, and give ourselves the privilege to begin to see things differently, to hear comments differently, to pay closer attention to our own thoughts. Now for acceptance, or the agreement that a situation or fact is true. Just because you become aware of something doesn't mean that you accept it. This is an entirely separate step, and sometimes we accept very slowly. This is such an important part of the process because this is how we are gentle with ourselves. There is an intellectual part of acceptance, an emotional part of acceptance, and even a spiritual part to acceptance. Acceptance takes place after our defensiveness is exhausted, or maybe we barter with that information, or simply pretend it isn't real, or attempt to prove it isn't real. But after we go through all of that and are exhausted, We find agreement in the reality of the situation. And this understanding and acceptance brings us peace. There is peace in the acceptance. This, however, is not the same as surrendering to what we accept, nor approval. You don't have to like it at all, but you do have to recognize that it is real. You may have heard the phrase living life on life's terms. It means that we recognize that whatever it is, is. And the good news is in accepting it completely, you are then ready to then do something about it. Which brings us to our third phase, which is the action, otherwise known as the response. Now, you can sit in acceptance for quite some time. You don't necessarily need to act right away. Again, a very different approach to how our families may have taught us to live. This isn't I will do something right away to fix it or change it or make it better or make it different. And this also isn't, I'm supposed to know what I'm supposed to do, so I have to do something immediately. This is pausing enough to allow you to consider your options. You actually get to think about how you feel about what you just accepted. You might want to even research what might be the best options. It also allows you to consider no action at all. And sometimes for our families, that is never a consideration. At times, you may hear that any solution is better than no solution, but this step challenges us to aspire to something greater. It allows us to take all of the time we need to consider the best solution, the best action for us. We stop playing the roles we learned to play in our families, and we get to be a truer version of ourselves and decide what is best for us. What action gives us peace? What action is the best solution just for me? Because I deserve to take care of myself. This doesn't mean others are going to like my action, and we can let that go because they have every right to not like it. But in the end, if I make a decision that gives myself peace, I am then healthier. I am more centered and I am more capable to think better, to engage with others in a healthier way. And I also get to be proud of myself in how I think and what I do. And that is such a huge part of what serenity is all about. So let me provide some examples real quick. We can see this in practice. In our Celebrating Families program, we talk about the roles that children take on in families. One of them is the hero child, the one who takes care of everyone, who tries to make everything okay despite everything happening in the family. It is a heavy burden to carry that into adulthood because we can't make everything okay. That's impossible. But some truly believe they have that much control because they need to believe that it is true. So imagine this person whose sister has been diagnosed with terminal cancer. The initial way this person may use the 3 A's may be exactly as you would expect. He becomes aware of the diagnosis and he accepts the truth of that diagnosis right away. And the action, boy, does this person become a research hound, reading all of the abstracts related to it, talking to experts, trying to get his sister to second opinions, and seeing the best surgeons, utilizing the cutting edge therapies to try and help his sister become well. But there may need to be a second level of awareness. He needs to become aware of the truth that this cancer is incurable, regardless of how much he loves his sister. It may take exhaustion in that role as the hero child to allow an awareness that he no longer can be in control of the cancer. It may take watching his sister not responding positively to treatment. But at some given time, he is ready to become aware that this cancer is beyond his ability to fix it. So the truth sinks in, and for a while, this truth slowly spreads from his head to his heart and ultimately his spirit. And when that happens, the action may then be more of a commitment to every day. and just being as good as he can to be present for his sister. But what he is able to do then is find a greater peace as he leaves management of the cancer to the medical professionals that they trust. And he just has to decide what to do with his sister and ways to take care of himself. Because when you admit that you can't control something, it can be really, really hard, especially when it's with somebody that you love. So he decides to visit his sister maybe every other day and allow some time in between for a break. Maybe time spending with his own kids and his own support system, so that when he goes for those visits every other day, he's actually stronger and a much more capable support for his sister. Now, let's go to a simpler example. We're going to use something easy like perfectionism. And we're going to say there's a woman who loves Martha Stewart, for our older generation, or for the younger generation, today's influencers, with all of these DIY projects that are posted on social media. So this woman, she just exhausts herself trying to have everything look beautiful in her home. And it does. It deserves to be featured in a magazine. It's absolutely stunning. And then she breaks her hip. And she can't run around cleaning and busy doing all these home projects that she preoccupies her mind with. This is a situation that forces her to slow things down. And she really struggles with not being able to be busy, not to be cleaning, not to be improving her home. And then it hits her like a light bulb goes off in her mind. Maybe it isn't enough to just want everything to look nice. Maybe I have a need for everything to be perfect. Maybe I am afraid people won't like me if my house isn't perfect. And from that light bulb moment, she can begin to accept that there was an underlying reason why she worked so feverishly to have everything look so perfect. And in time, especially without the ability to move around with her hip in recovery, she realizes that not only was she afraid, but there was no need. The friends and family continued to visit. They continued to help her. They continued to love her, even though her house was a mess, even if she couldn't shower, even if she couldn't put on her makeup. And they are having a wonderful time. And she begins to understand that they don't come over to sit in a beautiful house, they come to be with her. And her hip recovers. She decides that she wants to do it differently. She actually wants to enjoy people more and do projects less. She doesn't want to be a slave to needing everything to be perfect. She actually likes the idea of resting more and hanging out with other people. She decides she will only do a few projects a year rather than jump from project to project to project. She wants to slow things down. And the irony is, she finds she's actually happier with people in her home and without doing as many projects because now they can come over more often. And more irony is that everyone is actually more comfortable because she isn't running around trying to make everything perfect all the time. She's actually more at peace and she's more comfortable while they are visiting. Life is calmer and she isn't running around like crazy and she is at peace. So at the end of this, we're just going to go to a simple quote that you hear often in Al Anon meetings. Serenity isn't a matter of chance, it's a matter of choice. And by choosing an approach using the 3 A's instead of how we grew up, we can create a more serene life for ourselves.